Welcome to this online worship service of the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Shelter Rock. I'm the Reverend Jaye Brooks, and I minister to this congregation along with the Reverend Jennifer Brower and the Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore. Participants today include Winterflower Regla Robinson, a member of the Shelter Rock congregation, and the Reverend Karen Morrow, one of my mentors and, for me, a model in how to be a minister. Although we continue to be physically distant to protect public health, we also continue to create loving religious community, encourage spiritual growth, and build a more just and joyful world. At noon each Sunday, all are welcome at our interactive virtual coffee hour. Meet new friends and see the faces of people you already know. Yesterday in the United States of America, we celebrated Independence Day, July 4th, the anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. The Declaration of Independence, one of the founding documents of American democracy. It's a day meant to celebrate freedom, liberty under the rule of law, freedom based on the inherent right of every person to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Freedom guaranteed by the right of people in a democracy to govern themselves. Freedom guaranteed by the right of the people to demand good government from their elected representatives. Freedom to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. A pursuit that's possible only when the starting place and living conditions of every human being in these United States is sufficient to allow life to be something more than a struggle for survival. Until every one of us has this kind of freedom, none of us is free. In the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, we live in an inescapable network of mutuality. There is no justice anywhere until there is justice everywhere. Independence Day marks the beginning of a road to justice everywhere. It's a long road, but one of the principles of our Unitarian Universalist faith is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. So, even if the road is long, even if the way is hard, if we are true to our faith, we will not stop. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. The words of Reverend Dr. William Barber. Hope has two children, anger and courage, and you have to talk about both of them. Anger at the way things are, the way you grieve people, the way you're bothered. It's kind of like what Bishop Tutu called prophetic spirituality, that looks at things and says, this is just not right. It doesn't have to be that way. But then there's also, you have to have courage after anger, to be ready to address it, and the courage to do it with love and nonviolence, and not do it with the same tools as what you're standing against. Now we light the chalice of our heritage. The flame calls us to the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment.
I invite you to join me in these familiar chalice lighting words. We light this chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. This is a faith of an open mind, This is a faith of a loving heart. This is a faith of helping hands. Together we take care of our earth and work for peace and friendship in our world.
This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. I roamed and rambled, I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of a diamond desert, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I see my people. As they stood there hungry, I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
Beginning in June, our special collection goes to the Solidarity Fund of Long Island Jobs with Justice. The Solidarity Fund is a community initiative that offers emergency financial assistance to families of workers who face deportation. Since the pandemic began, the fund has operated as an emergency assistance fund for all immigrants, but especially those who are undocumented and therefore not eligible for government aid. The need is great and still growing. If you are able, please donate to help our community's most vulnerable families. Because we practice physical distancing to protect each other's health, we ask that you contribute online. For many of us, the online contribution has been a technological challenge, but we're getting good at it. Perhaps because of the world's deep need that calls us to new learning. To give through our website, on the home page, choose Donate in the menu bar, then click Donate Now, then scroll down to Special Collection. The Spirit of Life, when it comes, stirs compassion in the heart and moves our hands to give life the shape of justice.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they have become accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
A long time ago, but not too long ago, a man said, "All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." His name was Jefferson. There were slaves then, but in their hearts the slaves believed him too, and silently took for granted that what he said also was meant for them. It was a long time ago, but not so long ago at that, Lincoln said, "No man is good enough to govern another man without the other's consent." There were slaves then too. But in their hearts, the slaves knew what he said must be meant for every human being, else it had no meaning for anyone. Then a man said, "Better to die free than to live slaves." He was a colored man who had been a slave, but had run away to freedom. And the slaves knew what Frederick Douglass said was true.
In those dark days of slavery, guarding in their hearts the seed of freedom, the slaves made up a song. Keep your hands on the plow, hold on, hold on. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on, hold on. That song meant just what it said. Hold on. Freedom will come. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Out of war it came, bloody and terrible, but it came. Soon there were, as always, who doubted that the war would end right, that the slaves would be free, or that the Union would stand. America is a dream. The poet says it was promises. The people say it is promises that will come true. People do not always say things out loud, nor write them down on paper. The people often hold great thoughts in their deepest hearts, and sometimes only blunderingly express them, haltingly and stumblingly say them, and faultily put them in practice. The people do not always understand each other, but there is something there, always the trying to understand and the trying to say, "You are a man. Together we are building our land."
America, land created in common, dreams nourished in common. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. If the house is not yet finished, don't be discouraged, builder. If the fight is not yet won, don't be weary, soldier. The plan and the pattern is here, woven from the beginning into the warp and woof of America. All men are created equal. No man is good enough to govern without a man's consent. Better die free than to live slaves. Who said those things? Americans. Who own those words? America. Who is America? You and me. We are America. To the enemy who would conquer us from without, we say no. To the enemy who would divide us and conquer us from within, we say no. Freedom, brotherhood, democracy. To all the enemies of these great words, we say no.
A long time ago, an enslaved people heading toward freedom made up a song. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. The plow plowed a new furrow across the field of history. Into that furrow, the freedom seed was dropped. From that seed, a tree grew, is growing, will ever grow. That tree is for everybody, for all America, for all the world. May its branches spread and shelter grow until all races and all people know its shade. Keep your hands on the plow. Hold on. Hold on.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons, is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers' sons. That which touches me most is that I had a chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. To me, young people come first. They have the courage where we failed. And if I can but shed some light as they carry us through the gale, the older I get, the better I know that the secret of my going on is when the reins are in the hands of the young who dare to run against the storm. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Not needing to clutch for power, not needing light just to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny. Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way our struggle survives. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. Sometimes I can be quite difficult. I bow to no man's word. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Thomas Jefferson, a white man and slaveholder, wrote the Declaration of Independence when he was 33 years old. Jefferson originally wrote that among those unalienable rights were life, liberty, and property. But the word property started an argument at the Continental Congress. Delegates who were not slaveholders thought that the word property would implicitly protect slave owners and slave-owning states from the abolition of slavery. So Jefferson changed the third word to happiness. The Continental Congress could agree on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In retrospect, it's a bit ironic, isn't it? To the native nations, the colonists were in the process of driving out of their traditional lands. The notion that an individual could claim sole ownership of a piece of ground, of property, was culturally divergent, perhaps even incomprehensible. So happiness was interculturally more comprehensible, but that wasn't much help to the indigenous people of colonized North America. Jefferson also wrote, "All men are created equal." This language is not inclusive, and it wasn't intended to be. It obviously left out women, it left out slaves, it left out Native people, and it gave not a thought to GLBTQ people. It did include immigrants. 8 of the Declaration's signers were immigrants. They were foreign-born and yet participated as equals in the deliberations of the Continental Congress. Jefferson and the other members of the Continental Congress were the descendants of immigrants, and the Declaration itself condemned King George III for placing undue restrictions on immigration to the American colonies. It seems that Thomas Jefferson and the other founders never imagined children entering the country would be separated from their parents at the border and detained in cages. But all men are created equal. The idea of equality is there. The words reject the assumption commonplace at the time that the inherent worth of a person depended on the family into which the person is born. That some people are inherently more worthy because of their family of origin. This idea of equality of human beings is a powerful idea that's been in Unitarian and Universalist thought for centuries. Langston Hughes, in his poem Freedom's Plow, calls the idea of equality the freedom seed. The freedom seed. It took root in the hearts of all the people, even those the Declaration of 1776 and the Constitution of 1787 did not include.
Keep your hands on the plow. Hold on, hold on. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on, hold on.
200 years ago, people said men in sentences where today we'd write human beings. 200 years ago, drafting the Constitution, the founders seriously counted slaves as 3/5 of a human being, didn't intend to include women, and didn't count Native people at all. But today, we Unitarian Universalists see the world a little differently. Today, people from most religious traditions see the world differently. Today, more and more Americans have begun to understand the destructive heritage of 400 years of slavery and have begun to rise in resistance to say that Black lives matter.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Even in this time of COVID-19, during a pandemic, people of many faith traditions and a spectrum of ethnic heritage rise to say that Black lives matter. I hope everyone who hears my words will include themselves in the we who believe in freedom, the we who will not rest until it comes. One part of the freedom struggle is police brutality, especially toward Black men. And as we've seen in the almost constant stream of videos over the past few weeks, another part of the struggle is police brutality toward any peaceful protesters. Why is this happening? Because the protesters support the fair treatment of Black men detained by police? Because the protesters are out there protesting? Because people armed with guns and pepper spray and shields and batons and gas masks are better equipped, better armed, and in a position to exercise power? Perhaps. But perhaps it is because police officers are overtrained in the use of violent force and insufficiently taught to use their presence to protect the people they serve, and especially the people who march in the streets. Perhaps it is because we overfund the police while we underfund social services and the social safety net, then send armed officers to do a social worker's job. To raise these questions is not to be anti-police. One of the police officers arrested for aiding and abetting the death of George Floyd is Alex King, a Minneapolis police officer who is a person of color. He's from a multiracial family. He joined the police because he thought he could make a difference from within the system. That day in Minneapolis, when George Floyd died, it was his third day on the job. There's something wrong with the way police are trained. There's something wrong with our system, the system that militarizes peacekeepers who are supposed to protect and serve we the people. Consider Thomas Jefferson. His lifetime was filled with turbulence and revolution and war. Did he ever imagine that these same American people would be driven into corners by police armed with vicious pepper sprays, that they'd be maimed by rubber bullets to the eye, that they'd be shoved down on the pavement and clubbed relentlessly, and all too often left without medical care, and sometimes left to die? Did Jefferson ever imagine that people detained or arrested would be callously restrained in positions that cut off the very breath of life, or that an officer of the law would intentionally, over a period of 8 minutes and 46 seconds, press his knee on a man's neck until that man died? Let's go back to 1775, just after the Boston Massacre, before the Declaration, before the Constitution, when Jefferson wrote to his friend William Small about the Massachusetts governor's harsh response to the protesters who were there in the square just before the Boston Massacre. Jefferson wrote, "It is a lamentable circumstance that instead of leading to a reconciliation of his divided people, the governor should pursue the incendiary purpose of still blowing up the flames, as we find him constantly doing in every speech and public declaration. This may, perhaps," Jefferson wrote, "be intended to intimidate into acquiescence, but the effect has been most unfortunately otherwise." Yes. Otherwise. The words "I can't breathe" reverberate in our cities today. It seems as if every new video has someone saying "I can't breathe" and crying out to "Mama, Mama" before they die. It was Saul Alinsky, the 20th century community organizer committed to uplifting the lives of poor people, who told and retold a story about people who lived on a riverbank. Every day, these good people rescue and tend to the injured people they discover floating downstream, carried their way in the current. They rescue, they help, they weep for the wounded and the dead. It's a long time before anyone travels upstream to discover what's happening, what's causing so many people to be injured and drowning. Many of us have been good people living on the riverbank, lamenting the loss of life and wondering how so many come to be swept downstream to drown in the river. Most of us haven't traveled upstream to discover the cause, but at long last, our technology allows us to shelter in place while the internet brings us videos of a shabby, broken down bridge that does not support the weight of those who are trying to cross. We watch as people fall through the cracks. We see there on the bridge multiple representatives of our government who push and shove people trying to get across. We see uniformed peacekeepers who yell out to unresisting citizens, "Stop resisting," who viciously swing batons or punch or kick again and again. We watch horrified as people stagger into broken places and fall through. We watch as the guardians of democracy, whatever their official title, force human beings over the railing into the river to sink or swim as luck allows. We breathe, or maybe we hold our breath, through 8 minutes and 46 seconds as an officer acting in the name of "we the people" casually crushes the life out of a fellow human being. The work to build a truly free and democratic society isn't finished. No, not at all. The evidence is clear that in our American society, people with brown and black bodies are treated as not equal. Despite the civil rights movement of the 20th century, systemic racism is still deeply entrenched and has caused an invidious failure of equal treatment. Government, in theory created with the consent of the governed, has failed utterly to safeguard for every American an adequate starting place in life and adequate support for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As Unitarian Universalists, we're committed to principles, the inherent worth of every human being, justice, equity, and compassion in human relationships. These principles call us to bring to life the promise in our nation's charter. We can learn more by visiting the websites of the Poor People's Campaign and Black Lives Matter. We can read Widening the Circle of Concern, the Unitarian Universalist Association's recently released report on institutional change. The Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore, our own Shelter Rock minister and my colleague, is one of the co-authors. We the people, we who believe in freedom, must intervene with government at all levels and say, that we do not consent to more lives taken in our names. We who believe in freedom must demand that government at all levels shore up the tattered infrastructure, the broken bridges that have doomed so many to falling and failure. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Love calls us. Justice calls us. Our Unitarian Universalist principles call us to fulfill the promises of our most cherished values. May we rise up in answer to that call. The words of Maya Angelou. Today, the first and last of every tree speaks to humankind. Come to me here beside the river. Plant yourself beside me here beside the river. Each of you, descendant of some passed-on traveler, has been paid for. Here, root yourselves beside me. I am the tree planted by the river, which will not be moved. I, the rock. I, the river. I, the tree. I am yours. Your passages have been paid. Lift up your faces. You have a piercing need for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, and, if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream.
The time has come for us to extinguish the flame of our chalice. We do so with these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.